Hello, good morning, good evening and good afternoon to all you humans who have joined this particular webinar today. So I'm really delighted and privileged to present this panel webinar from the SHIELD Technical Committee, which looks at the opportunities and challenges within the ethical, legal, social and human dimensions of AI. I am so privileged and delighted to have four brilliant experts on this particular panel. You will see the names on here, but in a minute I will let them introduce themselves as they start by giving a position statement on this very, very important field. So my name is Keely Crockett, and let's get started. So the aim of the panel then is to provide some different perspectives from both academia and industry about the ethical AI landscape. And the topics we'll cover will focus around trust and safety, and they'll be bringing in individual experiences and lessons that they have learned in their own positions and share them with you. One of the difficulties in navigating the challenges in ethical uses of AI is that at the moment we have lots of emerging legislation. These have often been arisen from ethical principles. We have the United Nations, we have the OECD saying what is ethical AI. But legislation is playing catch up. One way to do that is to have standards, and you'll hear from some of our panel members today about the importance of the role of standards in developing responsible AI. And at the bottom, we've got the regular people, the citizens who we need to build trust with. I'm just going to skip that slide and just go straight here. To give you an idea of the global landscape, the difficulty and the challenges in terms of legislation, all these countries you can see here are currently developing their own. This is from the OECD website, and you can actually look and see what the current status quo is for all the AI legislation globally, and you will see it's a little bit of a minefield. Even language sometimes is different between different countries. And what I will end on with is one of the topics we're going to start with, which is all about trust and justified trust. In the UK, only just one country of the world, they've recently released a document on AI assurance, which talks about the use of justified trust. So what they're saying is for businesses to actually sell responsible AI, what they need to do is get groups of people or people to trust their systems based upon reliable evidence. And here's one of the challenges. What does reliable evidence actually mean? So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing and hand over to one of our amazing panelists, Professor Toby Walsh.
Thank you very much, and good day everyone, wherever you happen to be. I am speaking to you from Sydney, Australia. I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I acknowledge their ownership of these lands, as we do rightly in Australia whenever we begin talking. I have the privilege of being the Chief Scientist at University of New South Wales New AI Institute, and I've spent the last 40 years working in artificial intelligence. I think for most of the time, no one really cared about that, which was fine, because it was very much more science fiction than science fact. But as artificial intelligence enters our lives, I think people are becoming rightly increasingly concerned about the impacts it's going to have. The impacts are going to be both positive and negative. The fundamental challenge of a technology like artificial intelligence is its dual nature. The very same algorithms can be used for very positive ends as well as very negative ends. And so it's how we try and ensure that we get the positive with as little as the negative as possible. It somewhat surprises me. I think it's somewhat disappointing that there is so many different ethical frameworks proposed for dealing with artificial intelligence, because actually much is not new. It's not the first technology that has entered our lives, and many of the questions that we should be asking are actually the questions that we did ask and we always ask about any technology, with one significant exception, which I will come to shortly. And so therefore, if you look at all those different ethical frameworks and the different regulation that's being proposed, there's a lot of commonality between them. And I want to actually try and help you understand what is that commonality. A good place to start is medical ethics. That's had hundreds of years to develop. And indeed, by the very nature of medical technologies, they directly touch people's lives. And therefore, there is a very robust ethical framework to deal with medical ethics. And indeed, the sorts of principles that get put forwards to deal with medical technologies are actually a very good starting place, and indeed almost an ending place for discussing these sort of ethical frameworks that we need to think about for a technology like artificial intelligence. So what are the cornerstones of medical ethics? Well, there are four fundamental principles within medical ethics that are beneficence. I'll go into them in somewhat more detail shortly, but just to summarize: beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice. Beneficence, do good, do net good. Indeed, if you look at many of the ethical frameworks, like the ones that the Google or has its AI principles, or the OECD, there's typically something around that the technology should bring net benefits. That's very uncontroversial. Non-maleficence sounds somewhat do no harm. Sounds somewhat similar to do good, but is subtly and different. It's more focusing on the egalitarian than the utilitarian, focusing on the potential harms that might inflict anyone. It's not the same as beneficence, and you see this, for example, with technologies like facial recognition. That whilst there may be net benefits to using facial recognition in terms of being able to deal with harms, terrorist acts and the like, the fact that there may be individual harms, especially on particular minority groups, does cause significant concern. The third principle, autonomy. Now, this is autonomy of humans in the medical setting, and it's something that we should also be very careful to think about in terms of technologies like artificial intelligence. It requires us to, for example, have informed consent before we do anything. And this is why increasingly we're going to be concerned by AIs pretending to be humans, and we're not actually doing it with informed consent. The final principle in medical ethics, again, an important principle for artificial intelligence, is justice. This is a bit of a grab bag, but it includes ideas like fairness and respect for existing laws, and that the benefits and burdens should be spread equally. And again, those become very important issues when we discuss artificial intelligence issues around fairness and bias and discrimination. Those are important things. One other principle I think that might be worthy of consideration is the precautionary principle. This has entered the legal system in a number of places. It's, for example, it's enshrined in international law, in the EU law, and the Kyoto Protocol, which is that when an activity raises threats or harms to human health or the environment, we should be especially careful especially when those things are irreversible. And the one thing that I think is perhaps somewhat novel about AI is the speed and scale that we can do things. And that may require us to exercise the precautionary principle. In particular, for example, if we think about things like social media, the impact that it's going to have on people's mental health, especially that of young people, especially that of young women. I think it requires us, there is some evidence already, but the precautionary principle requires us to be rather careful in that respect. I said, and this is where I'm going to end, there was one thing new, and there is one thing new that is special about this technology that we've never had before, and that's autonomy. Not autonomy now of humans that I'm worrying about, but autonomy of machines, which is why I think that we see perhaps the more interesting novel ethical debate around autonomous cars and autonomous weapons. And indeed, I've been a very active participant in the debate at the UN and elsewhere around whether we should hand over killing to machines or not. I think that would cross an ethical red line that would take us to a new, difficult, dark place, and one that we should be very careful about. So as I said, to conclude, actually, I think there's very little that's new in terms of thinking about the ethical challenges that AI as a technology throws up. There's exactly the same things that we asked about. It does nevertheless create fresh problems because we can now do things at speed, scale, and cost that we could never do. And so there are important discussions, conversations we need to have about what those fresh harms are. But in terms of understanding what are the fundamental ethical principles. With that exception of the autonomy of the machines, there's very little that's new. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there'll be a chance for the audience to ask some questions. But what I'm now going to do is ask Professor Tørresen. I'm just going to make him presenter. Over to you, Jim, to share your screen and give your position statement, please.
Yes, thank you, Kili. Do you see my presentation now?
No. Blank.
Blank. How about now?
Oh. Yes.
Perfect.
Got it.
Yeah, but let's see. I should show my still perfect.
Still perfect.
It's thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to follow up on what Toby introduced here. It's to some extent overlapping. So I'm Jim Tørresen from the University of Oslo in Norway. Currently at the big robotics and automation conference in Yokohama, also Tokyo in Japan. So I'm at home. I'm pleased to be leading a group in robotics and AI, where we work with building our own robots, but also work with commercial robots and see how we can add intelligence and AI into their operation and increase their functionality. So, but today I'm pleased to introduce the so-called concept of AI safety. So I found this on Wikipedia. This to me seemed to be kind of reasonable and kind of like broad enough to cover my own understanding of it. So AI safety is about it's a rather broad interdisciplinary field concerned with preventing accident, misuse, and other harmful consequences of AI systems. So I think it brings in the perspective that on one hand, it's important that the system is kind of well designed and tested, and it works properly, and when you use it, it does what it should do, and it doesn't do mistakes. I mean, like much similar to what we're used to with regular computer programs on our computer, and us that have been using computers and software for quite a while know that the software has got more stable and there's less software bugs and so on to handle. At the same time, the threats from outside is I think even more a challenge now than before, with attacks and computer virus, and we have to build some add-on protection systems to protect our own computers, and similarly also with AI systems. So it's about both protecting the system you use, but also to avoid that that some take the technology and use it in public spaces, resulting in harm. And here comes also the concepts of machine ethics and AI alignment. So machine ethics, it means that the systems themselves are able to do ethical decision making to reduce the risk of unwanted behavior and misuse. And this is often very controversial because we argue that it's hard for humans to agree on what is morally correct, and there is no kind of unified ethics. But at the same time, like we talked about, like very different levels here of ethical decision making, and one kind of key key issue is this decision about the system being aware of if it is uncertain about what to do on one hand, and also if it's a system that interacts and kind of looks after a person of health monitoring, it should have some threshold, like when it can. I think the state of the person is stable or at what but like where should the threshold be for contacting the health personnel or caregiver? So there is a need for such a kind of ethical reasoning within the systems. Of course, it depends on the applications. And the last is AI alignment, which is much about personalization. Like we say that the benefit of these AI systems is that the technology can adapt to ourselves. It can learn our preferences. It can do what we want, and which is very nice. And it and it's the technology itself that adapts to us, and not vice versa. We don't have to struggle with cumbersome technology. At the same time, that's also a risk, because how should the system know like whether its users have good intention and or try to impact the system to do wrong things. So I have this illustration here. This is a very simplified illustration of an AI system. It's similar to assume it consists of these three different functions: sensing, reasoning, and acting. And you have different types of data as input, and the output of the system is actions, can be treatments or something else. And the critical here is the data that you input. We combine also with the algorithm that trains or adapts the system. So it's much about the quality of this data and amount of data and so on that impacts AI safety, and also who allowed to provide the data, because here comes this misuse or so. Like we talk about when we talk about trusting a system, I agree that it's much about that you see through use that it works in a good way, but at the same time, I mean, the system has to have some mechanism for deciding whether it should trust its users, because also users can have bad intentions. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you, and over to you, Killy.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm now going to hand over to Rajesh. I'm just going to give you full access to the screen.
Thanks,
So hopefully that will change. Do you want to see my screen?
All right. So I need to share. Okay. Can you please let me know what I'm sharing? Am I sharing?
You are sharing some slides and also some notes as well. So you're showing a presenter view.
All right. I have to change my screen. Okay. Now, is it good now?
Yeah, you're not in full screen mode, but we can see your slides.
Okay. So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to share now.
Turn on PowerPoint slides. Turn on the slide option.
Okay, let me see. Does this look good?
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
You got
Awesome.
it.
Thank you very Thank you, Keely, Professor Toby, and Professor Jim. What I'll be speaking about today is essentially about engineering trust. So we are going to try to evaluate and envision how we can actually transform what is being spoken about in regulations, whether the regulations are coming from the US, Canada, India, Australia, UK, European Union, all of those, into how can we actually translate into engineering systems that use cognition and intelligence into something that has some confidence that we can trust what is being rendered to us. There are a lot of opportunities when we speak from a perspective of engineering and with the perspective of building systems and enabling it for the benefit of mankind. But at the same time, there are quite a bit of challenges, many limitations when we are looking at certain aspects that are subjective and trying to make it objective. A couple of pointers the Goodhart law will hold, because if you kind of get too many metrics, it may work against you. So metrology will also become important. But I'm not going to be going way too deep. I'm just going to be skimming the surface to give you a flavor of how we can look at implementing systems that will enable trust. Nothing new again, but the way we look at the dimensionality will differ. So the way we would look at it from a complex system engineering perspective, the network of networks will change. My name's Rajesh Murthy, and I have been fallen in love with technology and engineering systems for close to 3 decades. And I've always been there stating that it's not about what you can do, it's should you really do it. Saying that, I'm going to move forward to what we are looking into from a perspective of building trust into systems, while looking at certain dimensions of ethics, legal, and regulations. Particularly, much of my work has been in the connectivity space. Telecommunications is one of them, and how we interact with control systems and enable the data plane to work in the networks, and thereby give services like whether it's your internet services, which has your data, your voice, your video, etc. There's also the part of society. There's a saying that society is quick to judge, but slow to think. And that's something that will impede your progress when you are engineering trust into systems. And of course, we always have the human element. Nancy Levesk in Engineering a Safer World actually brought many aspects of human resilience, or rather system resilience, and the human impact to it in her book, Engineering a Safer World. Key opportunities one can look at when we are implementing trust into systems is that trust becomes the foundational element to any of these artificial intelligence practices. I generally prefer to use the word computational intelligence to artificial intelligence, simply because we are still dealing with computational systems. Humans who have both cognition and intelligence, and so do many other living beings, plants and animals included, have more than just computability. Our synapses has more than compute functions. So thereby you would notice that you have way too many definitions of AI. And one of the definitions that closely rings to what I think about is David Parner's in his Communication of FACM 1984 article talked about AI. But for me, I prefer the word computational intelligence, because that is basically split into 3 pieces. One is the foundations of neural networks and learning, where you're building your infrastructures, you're basically your elements that would enable you to work inside while reacting to the stimulus from the outside, which is your fuzzy models, to the environment where you have your various sensors and various data collecting equipment that would provide you the required data to process inside. And then you can use things like evolutionary computing to make decision making. Probably Michael Crichton, if you're aware of Michael Crichton, his book Prey is an awesome read if you want to see how these come together and how disastrous it can be if we do not build trust in the systems. Why should we look at it now? Why do we need to look at trust today? Why didn't we look at it yesterday? We did look at trust yesterday. For example, the PKI infrastructures we have, the PGP signatures, the digital signatures, the hashing functions, the salt and pepper, we all had that, but it was meant for simple systems. As we are moving closer to systems that have or enable certain intelligent decision making, and then we are also moving towards where we are handing over certain human assisted autonomy, augmented intelligence, we need to think about how miniaturization is helping us drive ubiquity, the pervasiveness of these devices and networking that is enabling us to collect more data, improve the cognitive abilities, build our cognitive infrastructures, and gain a lot more insights from this infrastructures and drive that cycle of miniaturization to cognition. This raises a lot of opportunities and a lot more challenges. These advancements in technology that is driving miniaturization, ubiquity, and cognition allows the deployment in smaller, more ubiquitous devices, whether it's wearables, nanotechnologies, many other IoT devices. This proliferation enhances your accessibility and convenience, but at what cost? If they are not built to be secure, we are going to be leaking data. If these systems are built to not interoperate, the entire workflow breaks down, because when vendors don't use interoperability, so these different devices can interoperate, then we cannot actually have any kind of cognition. That breaks this workflow down. Standards, for example, we worked under the IEEE ethically aligned design. It's on version 2 right now, and the 7000 series standards, which provide us some guidelines on how we can enable this. But still, interoperability is something that needs to be looked into. There's a lot of interoperability that we have to have, not only from a perspective of interfaces, but interactions. The reason we have to talk about interactions is whether, say, for example, we have a gaming console, and that gaming console uses spatial computing techniques to interact with you. The interface is air. You don't have the kind of interfaces that we have been using from a human-computer perspective. Spatial computing opens a new realm. Facial recognition opens up another approach to perception and sensory recognitions, affective computing. That's another aspect that we have to look at. That's interactive again. It's way more than just an interface. It's interactive. The integrations required are different. The way the sensors are positioned, how you would engineer the sensors into the devices to talk and make it talk with the human and with the machines. All of this will come in, and that's the reason we need to talk about how do we embody trust into cognitive devices, into all the ubiquity devices, where is the miniature is enabling it, and probably will enable it to be embedded into our own body and making the wearables yesterday. All of this means that we need to group our pillars for trust in such a way that we can actually have a measure of what trust means. Our research, we have built this from a perspective where we can group it into perspectives where we already have some standards. For example, when it comes to reliability, we don't have much from resilience perspective. Reliability, we do have from, say, for example, software. We do have some from systems, hardware, and we can rely on that and build on top of it. Certain standards like IEEE 1633, which is the software reliability standard, or SAEs we have for several connected vehicle environments, and others will help us build reliability into devices. But we need to go beyond that, build for data, for models. Some people just claim models to be same as data. My opinion, they're not the same. Yes, you can store your model into your database, but that is not real data. The model has a lot more than data. You need to have orchestration along the lines of algorithms, orchestration for models, orchestration for data. These need to be reliable as well. And without that, you cannot go into securing them. The confidence, this is where the subjectivity can be made into some level of objectivity, where the confidence level can be measured for fairness, transparency, and explainability. There is a lot more to be done. For example, I'll give you a simple example. Today, when we say that our security posture is 3.0, what does that mean? That measure is meaningless when we don't understand what the confidence level is, what are the risk factors involved in saying our security posture is X. And that's where we have a lot of opportunities and the challenges that come with it. So in the past, we were just doing a simple linear software systems engineering. But our software systems engineering has to evolve better now. Just like the FACM model, when we talk about the FACM model, today we will talk about the 5P model. That's an evolution we need to have. The systems are no longer simple. We have a lot of virtualizations embedded. We have containerization, and on top of it, in networks now we can talk in terms of not only the physical networks, but the overlays on top of it, which are coming through the underlay fabric, the controller fabric, and the overlay fabric on which we will build our overlay networks. For example, your network slicing stands on top of all of these in the logical flow at the top level of the overlay network. All of these structures means that you need to implement a certain level of trust to enable it to be automated. The programmability implemented into these devices have to be interoperable. So your interactions and your integrations are critical, and that's where standards can play a big role. On top of it, you have to think about data, models, and algorithms. Professor Toby hinted on that it is nothing new. Yes, it's nothing new, but the complexity is new. We are dealing with a level of complexity never seen before, and we seem to be sadly making the similar mistakes we made with mainframes. Fred Brooks' seminal work on the Mythical Man Month appears to be something that is probably a mandatory read for every manager, every architect, every designer out there. The ethically aligned design gives some guidelines on how we can engineer ethics into our systems, but that is not enough. We need to go beyond that to ensure that we can build trust. I'm going to skip this very quickly. Basically, remember that because we are talking about engineering systems, these systems will lose trust over time. The reason we lose trust over time could be because of aging factors, because of changes to the ongoing threats, the attack surfaces that are exposed may change. The way our business models are going to be implemented may change. For example, we are in the world of servitization now. where we have moved from products only implementation to product service implementation. And this is where I believe what Professor Jim talked about in terms of distinguishing between the machine ethics and alignment comes in. And therefore, our technical trust is what I am talking about. But there's also the societal trust and institutional trust we need to think about. That cannot be engineered. It's just the way our society works. This basically means that from a technical perspective, we need to look at the orchestrations of the algorithms, the data, and the models, and how we put them all together and ensure that each workflow, each piece, each device contributes in, I suspect, a geometric progression. We are not there yet, but we suspect it could be a geometric progression similar to reliability, which is a product function, that when we group all of these three together is only when we can get a confidence level for our trust, and wherein build the conceptual model, which brings trust as ones that enable immunity and resilience. And that gives rise, that is from how we approach security, which has an impact from reliability functions and performance functions, and how we build this using the execution constraints of security, reliability, and performance has an impact on the privacy of the individual if we are dealing with personal data, and how we would implement the protections. One of the key things that we need to remember here is that the protections today are compliance oriented. That needs to change. If we are talking about autonomy, or autonomous systems, autonomous networks, or self-organizing networks, or self-optimization in networks, or in any other devices, that needs to change. We cannot no longer checklists will help. We have to look at solution-based, and we need to implement policy based on risks from runtime perspective, not device time perspective. Observability, which today is called PHM, prognostics and health monitoring, that will change. That needs to change to enable us to have better recoverability and enable the resilience of the system so we can build trust. This is kind of an overview of what we have worked on and how we can build a secure by design conceptual model on how we can enable trust into the cognitive infrastructures or intelligent systems we are building. Some useful references for anyone wanting to explore, and I'm basically stopping there. So if you have more questions or want to discuss more, we can wait for Bob to finish his presentation, and then we can go into Q&A. My approach is to trust humans, not systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to ask Bob now. I've got your slide up and sharing screen.
Okay, and ready to go. I'll try to keep it in the time limits. Yes, I'm Bob Reynolds. I come to the table with from an engineering background on the one hand, and also I've done a lot of work in applying engineering techniques to social sciences. I have an appointment in engineering at Wayne State and an appointment in anthropological archaeology in University of Michigan, and I have a book here. This paid political announcement. It's IEEE Wiley book and looks at evolution of the social systems, and that's really where I'm coming from in this talk. I thank Keely. It's amazing that when I thought of trustworthiness, I thought, oh gee, there's going to be a lot of overlap. There isn't. I mean, people come, there's similar ideas, but the perspectives are really very complementary. I thank Keely for putting us all together in one room. Amazing. So let's get going. Next slide. Okay, so trust, what do I think? Trust refers to artificial intelligence systems designed to develop, deploy in manners that are ethical, reliable, and aligned with human values and societal norms. Next. Main components of trustworthy AI from my perspective: transparency, explainable and documented. Lots of AI, as Rajesh was saying, are often black box and hard to document. Fairness, we want to minimize and mitigate bias to ensure equal treatment of all. Accountability, we want clear responsibilities in incident reporting. Privacy and security, we want data privacy and security enforcement of that data. We want reliability and robustness, consistent performance and error handling when the AI fails, and it will fail. Ethical considerations, alignment with human values and consideration of broader impact of society. We're often focused on the short term, we're getting the money. But in fact, we need to think about the long term. And coming from AI, from anthropology, I look at the long term, and I think it's important. A human oversight. Humans need to be in the loop and need to retain autonomy in critical decision making. Regulatory compliance. They need to adhere to laws and industry standards, and they need to be human-centric design, designed for use and for feedback by humans, not by other AI. Next. Next, good. Obstacles to trust in AI. No, before that, back. Yes, there you go. Obstacles to trust in AI: lack of transparency in the design and the explanation of AI results, presence of bias in the data employed to train AI, and fairness to users. A need for criteria to determine who is responsible for an AI mistake when it happens, and it will. A need for robust data structure, data storage, and protection from malicious attacks. Concerns regarding AI performance under different conditions and responses to unexpected situations so that they can not fail. Lack of user involvement in the design, testing, and training of AI systems. I know how that works. Criteria for ethical use in alignment with user values. A need for regulatory compliance and clear standards for AI development. And then lack of understanding of how AI works among the populace and the costs and benefits of AI and its use. Next. So there are really three levels of organization that I think about when I'm looking at an evolving system. And there are the government standards on the one hand, industry-based standards and models on the other, and finally corporate strategies. And we'll talk briefly about each of them. Next. So there are a number of different governance strategies. They differ, just like the panelists that we have. Very different perspectives, similar themes, but different perspectives. The European Union Artificial Intelligence Act focus on ensuring AI systems are safe and respect fundamental rights. The key provisions are bans AI systems that pose an unacceptable risk to safety and rights, strict requirements for high-risk AI systems, including mandatory risk assessment, transparency requirements for AI systems interacting with humans, generating deepfakes, or used in biomedical identification. The U.S. The AI Initiative Act has established an initiative promoting American leadership in AI. Well, basic key provisions are investing in AI research, developing AI standards and best practices, promoting AI education and workforce development, that's key, and engaging with international allies to promote trustworthy AI. Next. 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 Oh, yeah, there we go. China. Go back. There we go. China, next generation AI and development plan. China aims to become a world leader by 2030. Key provisions: heavy investment in AI research and infrastructure, integration of AI across various sectors, including healthcare, transportation, security, and smart cities, establishing ethical guidelines and regulations to manage AI risks across the board. For United Kingdom, hi Keely, AI sector deal documents, Key provisions there: investment in AI research, support AI startups and innovation, development of data ethics frameworks and regulatory guidelines, which Keely mentioned earlier. Next. Just two more. As Keely showed us, there was this the globe with dozens of different countries, and so I picked out a slice of that. Japan, AI Strategy 2019. Japan's AI strategy focuses on leveraging AI to address social challenges, improve productivity, and enhance global competitiveness. The provisions promoting AI R&D and its application to healthcare, ensuring AI aligns with human-centric values, and enhancing international cooperation on AI governance. The last one is an interesting one. Singapore. Singapore's framework provides detailed guidance for businesses implementing AI ethics and responsibility. AI governance principles, including transparency, fairness, and accountability, are spelled out. Practical recommendations for data management, human involvement are given, and encourages businesses to pilot and refine frameworks. So you can see there's literally a lot of different perspectives working in the same direction. Okay, next. And industry standards, well, I'll just, this is probably same old for the engineers among you, but IEEE has a number of standards on AI and autonomous systems, and also standards on AI and data privacy. I have illustrations, but we don't have time to go into them. The next slide. And then we have the ISO. They have standards particularly are important in defining concepts and the language that is necessary to articulate the design of a system better than we currently have. Next. And then the third one that I'll talk about is NIST. NIST has an AI risk management framework that provides a framework for managing risks associated with AI systems. Okay, and last slide is corporate standards. What do corporations do, or what can they do? They don't do all of these things. Support AI-driven innovations and tool development. They can use AI to promote operational efficiency in-house, get things done faster by people who are doing it there. Leverage AI to offer personal recommendations and experiences. I saw an article yesterday about people being able to effectively produce simulations of past relatives so they can talk to them when they want to. Use AI to support data-driven decision-making with analytics on large data sets to produce actionable insights. Develop AI partnerships with startup companies and to acquire startups for in-house AI. Generate ethical guidelines for AI development and deployment in their workplace. Train and upskill employees and develop in-house research labs to attract top talent. And then finally, exercise corporate responsibility to support social and environmental causes rather than just the daily corporate grind. Okay, those are my thoughts, and my perspective is done. Thank you, Keely.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to invite some questions, but while you can actually access the questions in the tab, and you can actually type some questions in. But first of all, I'm going to start off with a question, first of all, for Toby, if I may. Particularly as you said, the new thing was all about autonomy. So what do you see then? What responsibilities do we have, either you can answer this as researchers, engineers, or industry professionals, have to ensure AI safety when we're looking at autonomy? Oh, but we can't hear you at the moment.
Can't hear you.
All right, we like
Can't hear you.
technical challenges because we're all engineers.
Can you hear me now?
I can fix the light bulb.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yes, we can hear you, Toby. Go for it.
Nope.
Oh, no, he's gone again.
Nope.
I don't know.
We
I hear
can
you now.
Can you hear me?
You said, I don't know.
Yes.
Yes, you did. Now he's
So
gone again.
the technical challenge with autonomy is that machines cannot be held accountable. No one's hearing me?
You can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the technical challenge is that only people are accountable. Our legal system, our moral system only recognizes the culpability of humans, not of machines. And so ultimately in high stakes decisions, we have to ensure that there is some human is accountable. In many settings, that means ensures there's a human kept in the loop with meaningful human control over the system. But equally, there will be places where we will hand full autonomy over to a system because it will make the world a better place. But we have to ensure that those systems are designed so that we can do that with trust. We do that with the aircraft industry. We hand over decision making, we hand over control to machines, but we do it in a very regulated way. Flying is the most safe form of transport by many measures. It's been incredibly well regulated, incredibly well controlled to ensure that we can do that with trust.
Does anybody like to come back on that?
Can I have a question?
Yeah, Jim. Oh, yes, sure. Who's that?
Hi, my name is Dipankar Dasgupta. I'm from University of Memphis. I know Bob. Bob, hi, how are you?
Hi, yeah.
Your student Jonathan Meletic was here. Anyway, my question to you all is that the way the entire, AI development is going and industry is going, I feel it is one directional, and I agree with Professor Rajesh Murthy that it is computational intelligence. AI, machine learning are part of all this. And then the question is that if we look at how the image morphing came, and it became a fun in smartphone, you can change things. Now then it become a deep fake. Now deep fake is now detection is now critical issue. So I strongly feel that regulation should come with some guidance. And when I'm saying is guidance, that the companies are selling their tools, so that ChatGPT, GPT-5 and all this, but they don't take any responsibility what those tools provide. So making money without taking any responsibility, I think it is going in a wrong direction for mankind. I'm trying to hear what you guys feel. Anybody can answer.
Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to have a go.
Please go for it, Toby.
It's very clear that we are going to have to provide more regulation of the tech space. There was a period 20 or 30 years ago where it was felt that you couldn't and you shouldn't regulate the tech sector, that would stifle innovation. And that might have been true 20 or 30 years ago. But now the largest companies in the world are tech companies. We've always had to ensure that companies, especially the largest companies, are appropriately regulated, because otherwise they end up in monopolistic and rent-seeking behaviors. And that's what we're seeing today. There is immense commercial pressure for them to do that. We're seeing wealth being generated at an unprecedented rate. OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, is the fastest growing company ever. It's gone from zero revenue to $1 billion a year annualized revenue in a year. We have never seen wealth being generated at that speed ever before, and that puts commercial pressure in place that has resulted in behaviors that may not be aligned with the public good. We had to regulate big oil, big tobacco, big pharma, the big banks, we are going to have to regulate big tech to ensure that they are aligned with the public good.
Fantastic, Bob.
Oh, there's a classic quote, tragedy of the commons. Everybody thinks that everyone else is going to be doing their part, and no one, as Toby was saying, no one is stepping up to the plate. One of the key things, for example, is we have huge banks of computing power. Those computers generate heat. Okay, we're heating up the environment. I've heard there are installations up in colder climes in order to reduce the heat dissipation. So we're as we do computing, we're also interacting with the environment in not necessarily the best way. So we need to think about that as an issue as well. How does our use of computers, AI, impact the environment in ways that we don't necessarily anticipate or don't want to see?
Fantastic. Jim or Rajesh, do you want to come in on that question?
Jim, you want to go?
Yes, yeah, I think it's important to be aware of this is all the application areas of AI, and we work with robotics. Also, there the large language models are now of great interest, because you can also input images, and it opens a whole lot of more autonomous functionality. But then once again, you would trust. Like, we have to demonstrate that this system can have trustworthy operation. So it's also yeah, it's open up opportunities, but also so that we have to be aware of the risks here of the language models, even though they are kind of improving, and that they are still doing mistakes, and also but this technology can be used for like by unauthorized people, or people with intention to misuse the systems, and if we have a physical systems, we can also, in addition to providing mental harm, it can also provide you physical harm. So it's another level of kind of risks, and especially in public spaces, and it's kind of hard to foresee what the technology can be used for, especially if it gets into wrong hands. Thank you.
Okay. Rajesh, we're coming towards the end, so do you want to answer that? Any adds to that?
One thing is that it's not about just regulations. We have too many regulations. How are we going to enforce them? Self-regulation does not work everywhere. So some of our work is in networks, and that's one of the most regulated industries. The challenge is, how are we going to enforce the regulations? How are we going to ensure that there is compliance to the regulations in a manner that people can understand? Take a look at any of your Ofcom or CRTC or FCC regulations, and how, the regulations, some of them are challenging, let's say that way. How do we enforce those regulations? That becomes the key.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to throw one thing, because we haven't really mentioned the general public and their views and opinions on this. And if we look at the ChatGPT explosion as one example that's still rumbling on, think about people's understanding ticking terms and conditions and privacy notices without fully understanding, are we opting in to allow our data in our generative AI to be used in training models, or are we not? People don't know. They just see it as something new. They want to try it, and they don't actually know the risks of being, of sharing that data. And we've seen so many cases in the media. This is such a massive topic area. I had about 10 other questions on here, but I know we are now at midnight in the UK, and I guess morning and evening in other places. So what I will do is I will say thank you very, very much. I really appreciate the time and the insights, and this topic is so huge. I'm sure we're going to hear from some of our speakers on their individual webinars because there's so much to discuss. But I'd like to thank you a good morning and a good evening, and I hope you will take on board some of the ethical principles and ideas that have been discussed today. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for inviting us, and great time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Much.